Hey, everybody, welcome to this edition of Total Health Live. This is our regular Friday program, and I am one of your hosts, Dr. Christopher Vogelmann, star of stage, screen, and my own imagination. And with me is Monika Klein, the nutritionist to the stars and a legend in her own right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We have two special guests today.
Frickin' Frank.
No, we have our mascot.
What?
Our mascot.
Oh, it's Big Chewy.
It's Big Chewy. But this is his new friend.
Little Chewy?
No, he's bigger than
Big Chewy and biggest Chewy.
There we go. See? This is the new friend.
Big Chewy and who?
I'm not sure what we'll call him. Maybe Nutty?
Nutty?
Mr. Nutty?
Mr. Nutty, not Mr. Peanut.
Well, I guess they're pals because, Butternut, he's from Nature's Delight.
Nature's Delight, how delightful.
So we could call him something like Mr. Buttery or Mr. Buttery and Mr. Chewy.
Not Mr. Clean.
No. So anyway, these are good for you. They're good for your gut, and they are highly nutritious. And I would recommend that you cut them up and either steam them.
Yeah, because swallowing them whole is very
difficult. Very difficult. Anyway, these are very healthy butternut squashes who now have names, and I can't prepare them because they become friends.
I'm going to say these are like pets. You can't, after you name them, you can't eat them.
No, you can't name them. So these are both from Sprouts Market, from our local Sprouts Market. And so bake or steam, or even put them on in your skillet with some olive oil and many fresh herbs. You don't need a lot of special herbs for it, but it also makes a great squash soup in the fall. But we don't even want to talk about soup today because I think it's 100 degrees here. And I know you're struggling with air conditioning, aren't you?
I am. We are air conditioner, central air crapped out. So I quickly installed, along with the wonderful help of our 13-year-old redhead, getting 2 air conditioner window units in. Thank God we have the spares.
Wow.
So it is toasty up here on the second floor.
Toasty.
There's no sea breeze today. So
yeah. Well, we're planning for a scheduled power outage on Sunday night.
Oh.
And
I'm feeling the vapor.
Do you have fans that can blow? Because I've got the air on and fans right now.
There are fans downstairs for the more vital members of this family, and 2 air conditioners downstairs for those people. There's one fan in the next room.
So if I start seeing dripping on your forehead, we'll just have to.
I'm ready to look like Richard Nixon.
Actually,
I'm ready to look like Richard. I'm ready to look like Richard Nixon in the first Kennedy-Nixon debate. So
there you go. Yeah. So Tricky Chrissy.
All right. So we got Big Chewy, we got Nixon, and
we've got Mr. Buttery.
We got schools opening, and mostly in southern
schools. States. Not out for the summer. Schools in for the
fall.
Well, it's still summer though. Not here. It's not fall.
I remember places like Georgia, for example, they used to start, some places south would start even in the end of July, actually.
It's so foreign to me because first, after Labor Day, that's when we started school. And apparently on the East Coast, that's what's done too, right?
That was our thing in New York State and also in Virginia. It was after Labor Day.
Apparently it's still so. I was talking to our collaborators on a big launch that we're in the midst of creating, and anyway,
like the Apollo program?
Pardon me?
Is this like the Apollo program?
This is a big launch. Yeah,
it's a big launch.
So I was talking to our collaborators on the East Coast, and they don't start until after Labor Day. Their kids don't start till after Labor Day. So So it still exists here in California. It's different though. But here's some interesting news pieces on this. So there have been 4. This was yesterday. There were 4 cases so far, and mostly in southern states of kids contracting COVID.
Well, when you say four cases, it's more than 4 individuals, from what I understand at this point.
Well,
because there's a school, there's an entire school of 900 people that had to quarantine.
Well, was it because one case? Was it because of one case?
More than one. There were over 20, including students.
Okay, well, this was maybe old information. Again, this was from yesterday. So things might
yesterday's news is yesterday.
Is old news. That's right. But also here was a massive motorcycle rally, major motorcycle rally in Sturgis.
Gotta ride your hog.
And it's so interesting because I'd never heard of it before until I heard this report. And I haven't. No, I don't. It's not something that's I'm interested in. It's not something that I'm interested in, but in my what's it called? I get a magazine from AAA every month. What's it called now? It's just I'm blanking.
West World or West Ways, I think. I can't remember what it is. West something.
West Ways. Anyway,
Ways.
That one. There's a whole major story in there about Sturgis. So only 2.3% were wearing masks. Potential super spreader event, of course.
Oh, potential, my butt. It's going to be a super spreader event. It's like a rally in Tulsa.
Absolutely.
Well, this is worse because they're together for 10 days. So.
Yeah. Well, I suppose they're not having that other event up in. Oh, wow. What's that event? Burning Man. I'm sure that's.
Oh, yeah, Burning Man. Yeah.
I'm sure that's not happening. I mean, most events are not happening. Not
the big ones. I mean, there are some events where you now see, like in the UK, where they have outdoor concerts, but they have them kind of not roped off, but basically sort of fenced off in groups of 5.
I did see that. Yeah. And then the outdoor movie theaters are sort of like tailgating parties where they're hanging out in the back of their vans or SUVs.
Well, drive-ins. The challenge is that there was 1 or 2 concerts at these drive-ins where the people left their cars and rushed the stage, like the old mosh pit and stuff like that, and they were not using any masks. So you have to.
Why would they? No, but why would they?
Because
it's not something that you do in events like that.
It's a minefield.
It's a minefield. There you go. What magazine is that? Time?
That's the latest edition of Time with the plague election. So I like it because they have all those little mines are in the shape of COVID virus particles.
Yes, they are. I saw that. Those very, very dynamic graphics for sure.
It is illustrative. Yeah. So Sturgis is a place to stay away from right now, but New Zealand is a place where they really know how to do things right.
But just let's go back before Sturgis. Back to Sturgis for a minute. Okay, it's not just Sturgis. Stay away from all the people that went to Sturgis. How do we know? I mean, there's no tracking available. How do we know who they are? They came from all over. So that's the point. It's not Sturgis. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So New Zealand was zero.
Yeah, it was zero for quite some time, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, they had it contained. And do you ever watch the Holderness family, their videos?
We do. It's one of our favorites on YouTube, The Tube of You.
They are hilarious. They are hilarious. And I just saw something just now, and they were, touting how effective New Zealand was and how they love their Cabernet Sauvignon, how they make such good Cabernet Sauvignon. And it was a great song. Of course, they're so fun. But New Zealand, 200 people in a cluster. So they don't really know how this happened. There are 2 theories here. Family members worked in a frozen food factory, or the biosecurity staff who check out the security for people coming in from abroad were not tested. 63.5% of the biosecurity staff were not tested. So they think that's probably the possibility.
So be sure to test the biosecurity staff at your house.
Everywhere. Check that biosecurity staff. But, the interesting thing that I heard was, this whole frozen food factory phenomenon. COVID can be preserved in ice because they've done research and they've seen the 1918, Spanish flu H1N1. They excavated, they excavated or exhumed some of the bodies, and the virus was still in there after 90 years.
That is
the
one
virus
little powerful
did not die. That is a tough virus, that's for sure.
It has a strong will to live, even beyond death.
Yeah. Well, it didn't die. It's the host died.
It was just hanging out, waiting for the appropriate time to reemerge.
Yeah. And what do you know? Go ahead.
I was going to say, what about our friends in Russia, Mother Russia?
Yes. What about Russia? You know about Russia quite a bit.
I know about Russia.
Much.
I remember Sputnik, but now they've come up with a new vaccine that's been pushed by a bunch of oligarchs and some sort of a new corporation, and they've dubbed it Sputnik 5 or V, depending on how you're looking at it. But I don't know. I spent a lot of time in my life around a lot of Russian friends in D.C., and I can't tell you that there were that many who were super pro-Putin. And it's one of those things where, there's some efficacy and mostly safety issues surrounding a virus that's produced that quickly. Because number one, you don't know if it's going to work. And number two, you know nothing about the side effects, the potential side effects. And I think they've only tested on a couple hundred people. So.
Yeah. I mean, apparently they're testing it. They're doing the double. Well, what are they doing? They're doing the clinical trials as they're giving these people the vaccine. This is what they're doing. So
we're gonna launch you into space as we finish building that rocket.
Yeah, or as we finish training you and teaching you how to use your oxygen mask and all the equipment.
We'll teach you which switches to flick while you're on the way up.
While you're on the way up, that's right. Yeah. So same sort of idea. I mean, Russia's been an interesting case study. I mean, the numbers are low, and I mean, there's many countries that might be, not reporting what the
I think the numbers are low because they underreport. So
absolutely, it doesn't make sense.
No, and in fact, in the U.S., as a matter of fact, the thought is, it looks like there's maybe 167,000, depending on deaths so far, depending on who you believe. The actual number by most epidemiologists, they believe that it's probably over 200,000 right now, but there hasn't been sufficient testing. For example, they used to test people in the morgues and in the funeral home, but they don't have enough test kits to do that anymore. So,
well, I know that they in the UK they were reviewing some of the death rates as being not COVID related, but they were lumped into being COVID related deaths. And I think it went down like about 5,000 in their estimation. 5,000 deaths were not COVID. So I mean, there's just there's things changing and so much nebulousness that it's just hard to know what's what, isn't it? Don't you agree? I do. I agree with myself.
I'm glad you agree with yourself. Nebulousness. That's what I'm thinking about. It's just a large gassy mass in space.
Yeah. I mean, it's like vague. It's foggy. We can't.
It's vaporous.
There's a clear indication of what reality is.
As opposed to vapid.
Yeah.
So I mean, but that whole thing just it bugs me a bit because everybody, I'm not a big pro-vaxxer, I'm not a big anti-vaxxer, but I think that I worked in pharmaceutical sales for a long time, and in the training and all the stuff that we were doing, the profit motive is very, very high. So that's why I'm a little suspicious when Moderna is given a contract in advance of the tested virus tested vaccine to produce for sale to the United States government 100 million doses of a vaccine that's yet to be approved. That's a little shady.
Isn't the whole pharmaceutical industry just that's what it's all about. It's profit
Big
motivation.
Pharma. I will tell you, as a pharmaceutical sales rep in my past life, we were basically trained to be pure mercenaries. Our goal was to push the product as much as possible, get as much shelf space as possible in pharmacies for the OTC products, and get the physicians to prescribe our product over any other, even if we had a product that wasn't as good as the competition.
Well, now with advertising, it's the patient that's pushing that. So
Yeah,
the pharmaceutical rep and the patient are pushing the doctor. Yeah. But I have to retract what I just said. I mean, it's not the only thing. There are medications that help people. Certainly, I mean, you know, my husband wouldn't be alive if he didn't have the medications that he has. So, but the compounding, is he sicker because, you know, this medication caused this thing, so we gave him another medication and that caused another thing, all these side effects. I mean, certainly it's disastrous, really, you know, the healthcare system that we have and the whole model of, you know, suppression, you know, the whole drugs suppress. They suppress different parts, different systems in the
well, yeah, some suppress, some are stimulants, clearly, because
yes, that's true. You know, there was an infusion drug called Rituxan that my husband we used last year, and it's actually considered an I guess it's an anti-cancer. It's a chemo, so it decreases the immune system, and it's supposed to also help with this condition, myasthenia gravis, and other autoimmune conditions. But I just thought, I'm not messing with anything. I'm absolutely not going to touch suppressing his immune system at this point. Not at all. Even though it does help, I can't afford to risk the side effects that might put him in the hospital. So stability is what we're looking for.
You definitely want to look for stability. I think so. When you have hyperstimulation of the immune system, I saw this with my mom, for example. She had a very rare autoimmune disorder, and she was given.
What did she have? Excuse me.
Wegener's granulomatosis.
Oh, right.
So in that case, you know, the symptomatology is such that you have bleeding in the sinuses, bleeding in the lungs, bleeding the kidneys. So there's blood coming out in a lot of different places. And so to suppress that, because its immune system gone wild, unlike Girls Gone Wild in those old videos, this is immune system gone wild. And so they would suppress it with methotrexate, which is an old anti-cancer drug.
Used in RA a lot.
What?
It's used in rheumatoid arthritis a lot.
I know, all the autoimmune systems.
Yeah.
So the other challenge was they would use simultaneously, they would use the corticosteroids now to reduce inflammation. So if you combine an anti-cancer drug to suppress the immune system and use a corticosteroid to suppress inflammation in the immune system, you get a very interesting reaction, which is that some organ systems actually start to shut down at the recommended doses. So my father, in his infinite wisdom, thought that, hey, what if, since my mother wasn't doing well, what if I cut these doses in half and do a microdose approach to what's going on? And so the minute he did that, within about 3 days, she started improving rapidly. And then she went back to the rheumatologist. The rheumatologist said, my God, you know, things are going so well. Let's reduce your dosage from 150 to 75, which meant that my dad would reduce the 75 to 37.5. And so whenever the rheumatologist gave a dosage recommendation, my father always cut it in half. And this particular rheumatologist took up a position, I think, at Hopkins. He left Buffalo, New York to Hopkins. And he interviewed my mom towards the end. He says, you're the longest living patient I have ever seen with this particular immune disorder. And I just told my dad, I said, well, that's because he's been killing them off quickly with too high a dose. So biochemical individuality plays a huge role in medications. And I would imagine it's the same thing with vaccines. I've always wondered at why the dose of a particular medication, pharmaceutical, would be the same for a 250-pound man as it would be for a 95-pound elderly woman.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No thought to body weight or
that's
metabolism.
Well, my husband almost died last year with an antiviral medication, a cyclovir that was given for shingles. I mean, the shingles was quite mild, but he was in isolation. But a cyclovir put him in a near coma. And for many other people, it's fine. But yeah, absolute bioindividuality. So I think most people don't question the medication that they're put on or their loved ones are put on. But I always encourage you to do some research and speak to people that might be able to give you some further information. It's tough though, because most people don't have the depth of understanding to know the questions to ask it's very tricky to be in a situation where you're getting prescription medication and you're not really sure what the side effects, how it might affect you.
Having sold pharmaceuticals, I can tell you when you look at those long sheets, the indications
I know
that come in there,
massive sheets of explanations. But who's going to read that? Like, who reads a contract? Usually, a legal document. I just saw a really funny Jim Gaffigan stand-up about reading legal documents.
I got one here to review a little later.
I read them, but most people don't. He said, I'm paying you $500 an hour to read it. You read it.
I'll accept $500 an hour.
Anyway, those things attached to the medication, the disclaimers or whatever you want to call them. It's the little gosh, what do we used to call them? We used to call them the little detail sheets. Little detail.
It's the detail sheet. The insert is what actually. It's a package insert.
Yeah.
In every package. So,
yeah,
but
they're quite extensive for sure.
Yeah. So after we got into the phase 3 trials and things, we talked about some of the factors in epidemiology with respect to the demographics as to who tends to suffer the most or who actually suffers the less. So you had some notes here that you were looking at about women suffering less.
Yeah. So there was some research done on women suffering less and dying less from COVID. And actually a variety of viral diseases. This was done through King's College in the UK, and they were using a Zoe tracker app to track it. So they saw that estrogen was the most important difference, and postmenopausal, the trend shows more diagnosed cases and symptoms than non-postmenopausal women. So men are diagnosed more with COVID than women. Postmenopausal are diagnosed more, or not diagnosed, have contracted COVID more often than premenopausal. However, it's not that significant. So they're still in the preliminary stages to see the difference between, how estrogen impacts as a protective hormone against viral load.
So by what you're saying, then, should I be dosing up, juicing up with estrogen?
Well, then you might get some, some not so great side effects as well as a male.
But I might be feeling pretty. So.
You might be feeling pretty. That's right.
That might be true. Hey, so with some other news about,
I thought that was interesting. I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the actual mortality for men is higher than women, from what I understand.
In general, for anything.
Yeah. Well, except for uterine cancer.
Yes, except for female-related cancers.
Although
I said that men are being diagnosed with breast cancer as well.
Oh yeah, that's been going on for many decades. So we're talking about the food supply last week and the reliability of the food supply, and you mentioned something the other day about red onions, which is interesting because I just had a bunch of red onion with no side effects whatsoever. But what's going on with the red onion?
So the red onion, there are certain suppliers, Progressive Produce and Thompson International, to be specific, They are suppliers for Trader Joe's and Costco and several other grocery stores across the nation. And that they have they've found salmonella in those red onions. Red onions specifically, not other kinds of onions, but specifically the red onions. Although in another report I read earlier, they were also lumping in yellow and white onions, but all the reports that I see, always red onions. So it's interesting because, red onions, I have red onions every day in my salad. I just love them. They give the salad so much more flavor, and they're really a high source of quercetin, which is definitely an antiviral. So it's interesting that this is happening with a very potent antiviral that's in your kitchen. So I'm not going to say anything about conspiratorial things, but it's just funny that should happen at this time when we need all the antiviral help that we can get. From our food supplements.
We also were in a non-pandemic situation, like over the last couple of years, with several romaine lettuce things. So I don't know that.
Yeah, romaine was last year. That was the hit. That was E. coli.
So E. coli. I mean, we've had salmonella, E. coli, wisteria, a number of different things within the food supply. But I wouldn't pay any heed to a conspiratorial thing to take away the antiviral foods that we eat.
I want my red onions. Actually, I got 2 red onions today from Sprouts grocery store. So they don't come from either of the suppliers. So I think I'm safe. I actually think I had salmonella, actually.
Your old pal, Sal. Salmonella.
And my understanding that, in Food Science 101 in university was that they, it mostly came from poultry, but of course it comes from mostly animal products. But now they've broadened it, and it is found in vegetables as well now. So there's this interchange of cross-fertilization. So anyway, it was very sad, but hopefully we'll get it under control, and hopefully people won't die of that as well. I mean, that's all we need is another problem, a viral problem,
So, it's always good to have your posts go viral, but it's not so good to have your vectors. Your vectors go viral via food.
Yeah.
So in terms of strategies for staying alive, we still encourage people to wash their produce, to wash everything that you get from a store. Because
speaking of staying alive, another thing I saw this.
Were you listening to the Bee Gees? Staying alive.
Well, I was. My very best friend. She sent me she lives in Canada, and she sent me a messenger, and it was she sent it to me like a month or 2 ago, and I didn't pay attention to it. And I watched it last night, and it's perfect because I just needed something to laugh at, really. And it was these, I don't know where it was, and they were sort of wearing shepherd kinds of clothing, and there were these goats, with those floppy ears, and they were walking to the tune of Staying Alive, Staying Alive. And it was hilarious. I wish I could put it on the screen right now. You're not smiling at all.
I'm picturing the goats, and I'm trying to figure out, are they
They're
going to
walking
be
like Staying Alive, like John Travolta.
I don't. I'm just thinking they're going to taste very good, like cabrito.
The what?
Like in Mexico, chivo.
Herd of goats.
Chivo and other things in Mexico are used. Goat is one of the most popular meats. So I was questioning whether those herders would actually be in Mexico or not, because Staying Alive would just be so ironic to those goats.
They were probably more for goat milk. They were probably being, well, anyway, that would be ironic too if they were, staying alive.
I think I was processing the irony in my head.
So anyway, you were talking about staying alive. What other things can we do to stay alive? Well, we just don't want to stay alive. We want to be healthy. And
well, yeah, because I would say that death is highly overrated.
yeah. Yeah, it's an end product, that's for sure.
It's good.
So,
it's really great for funeral homes and casket sales, I have to tell you.
yeah. So
if you're
we
in a
want
funeral
to
home business, you've got more business than you can handle right now. So,
and we are in the midst of launching a really great series starting on Tuesday. We had to backtrack a week because of
power failure, storms.
It's interesting. Yes, it was the East Coast power, the tropical storm last week that impacted our launch. And also my graphic artist who lives in the Philippines was impacted by a typhoon. So, if you're doing international business or trying to, do something across the globe, there's all sorts of things that can happen as we see.
It's a great way to disrupt your workflow.
So, yeah. So power outages everywhere. We're going to be launching this, and we're not going to call the title yet. We're going to surprise you. We're not going to reveal the title yet. We'll surprise you, but
you're going to surprise me too. You're going to surprise me also.
It's a 4-part series.
That's right. 4 parts.
It's a 4-part series, video series, and we're excited to be able to share this information with you. And
sorry, that was me getting excited.
Look in your inbox, and stay tuned. We'll be posting things on Facebook as well about the videos and the trainings that are coming.
And I would also recommend people subscribe to the email list on Coaching for Health. If you go to coachingforhealth.com, you'll see a little subscription thing in there, because you'll get the latest, the greatest, and all the updates on the video series that's coming up next week.
Yeah.
That's my call. That's my call to action for your satisfaction. You can also enter your email in the Coaching for Health little messenger thing, which is send us a message. So.
Yeah, please. Below.
Yeah, because you wouldn't want to be in the dark, especially if we need to have power outages on Sunday.
Power outages, no. So again, what I talked about a little bit last week was this connection back to COVID, this connection with increased weight and being more susceptible to contracting COVID.
Yep.
BMI above BMI, basal metabolic rate, if it's above 35,
I thought it was body mass index.
What's that?
Body mass index. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basal metabolic rate, BMR.
But yeah, BMI.
BMR. It's not the basal metabolic rate. No. It's the BMI. Thank you very much for correcting me, Christopher.
BMI. I think it's because I used to belong to a BNI group, networking group.
Oh, BNI. So did I. I belong to a BNI group too.
Your BMI, and not to be confused with your BM, because that's a whole different category.
So 35
or higher.
IBMs.
IBM, BMI. IBM is big blue, but you don't want to big blown up. Hey, and we've been chugging along with this little keto thing going here. It's like, I'm extremely pleased to see that there's less of me to love at this point.
Yeah, 15. You lost your quarantine 15. I understand.
Quarantine 15 is gone. We're heading down to get even less. We're gonna go pre
30.
I think I'm gonna go pre 2015 actually.
Good for you. That's good. That's good. That was pre-marriage.
Yeah, I'm trying to get down to my premarital weight.
This is what happens when you get married. You
fat and happy.
Try as much. You don't try as much.
I think the issue is simply one of quantity of food, because I recognize now that as a bachelor that I would be consuming a lot less food. I cooked less, I ate less, I did a lot of shakes and smoothies and things like that for breakfast and lunch. And so my calorie count was actually lower, my activity level was higher. And because I was working in the chiropractic office every 5 days a week, sometimes Saturdays, and I recognized that my physical activity level was really high outside of even exercising. My food intake was relatively low. And so I mean, it was just like I was far more active and burning calories like crazy. And my metabolism was a lot higher when I was in my 20s, 30s, and 40s.
So let's call it the marriage 15 or the marriage 25.
No, I don't want to blame marriage on it because I'm still married and my weight has decreased dramatically.
Right. But I think initially let's call it the newlywed 15 or something like that.
The newlywed 15?
Newlywed 15. But my husband loved to cook. He was an amazing cook, and you're married to someone who loves to cook and is a great cook.
A stellar cook, food blogger, yes. Mexican food blogger.
Yes.
I mean, in fact, she did a recipe for Mexican street corn for a brand. Since you're mentioning Sprouts, it was Kingsford Charcoal, Walmart, and Master Craft Grill or something. So we had a 3-camera shoot last week. And I mean, Mexican street corn has everything from, of course, the corn to the mayonnaise that's on there and lime and everything. That stuff is amazingly delicious.
Amazingly rich.
Amazingly rich. But that video is just going wild today because there was a team, the particular brand, I think it was the Kingsford people, they just edited an incredible number of hours of video into just what is one of the funniest, most engaging videos that I've seen in a long time.
So we can see it online?
Yeah, it's in the Kingsford Charcoal YouTube channel, but I'm going to post it on my profile just as an example. I mean, when you think about it, though, the Mexican food, of course, has a lot of carbs in it, and so it's been really difficult to restrict things like tortillas, corn, and rice, and all these other things. Yeah. So you make the recipe and then you feed it to your teenager. So,
well, I'm going to get back to this 35 BMI in just a second, but I did want to say something. Last year we had an aide that was very quite good Mexican at Mexican cooking, and he used to make this guacamole that had, of course, avocado, it had goat cheese in it, it had mayo in it, it had what else? It was just, it was so rich. It was so rich, but everyone loved it. And it was addictive. I mean, it was just so incredibly tasty. But he added all sorts of things that I wouldn't normally do. By the way, with regards to the red onion, they're also recalling salsas, specific salsas as well in the stores. So
it's probably paste because it's made in New York City.
The paste?
I don't know.
No, it's like, I think the fresh, the fresh salsas that you get in stores and grocery stores that have the onions in them. So I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget that. But back to the 35 BMI.
I don't want to get back to 35 BMI. Actually, I never hit 35.
Let me finish just a moment. They're showing that now I've lost my train of thought. They're showing that most people who have greater than 35 BMI, they're put on respirators more often, and they're also admitted into the ICU more often. So weight is a real crucial thing when you're trying to stay healthy and certainly prevent yourself from contracting the virus. However, that said, I mean, I'm reading so many statistics that they get sort of like it's confusing. And but this herd immunity is definitely developing. And I think it was 3 out of 10 have actually had COVID. Actually had COVID. Did you see that in the last few days? I read that somewhere.
Well, we've had personal experience because my nephew had COVID. That was one where they had isolate him, and it was hard to isolate him because he's in his early 20s. But the thing about it is that the notion of herd immunity is an interesting one because it is, while it's possible to create that within the United States, it also means effectively you're going to have at least 1 to 2 million people dead. So you have to figure out, do we want to take away 2 million people? So,
well, of course we don't want to do that, but what's happening is there's also a lot of people that have it that we don't know have it because they're symptom free. And for all I know, I might have had it too and not have had symptoms. Even my husband.
We speculated that we might have had it back in January because we had none of us were feeling really good for about a whole week, and one member of the family was complaining about loss of taste, and then I just had this horrendous cough that just lasted for 4 days. And,
I mean,
nothing could help. You don't know.
We don't know.
The bottom line is there are a lot of unknowns, but what we do know is that if you mask up and you wash your hands regularly, you have plenty of sleep, rinse off your foods that come in, and you cook things thoroughly, you're going to improve your chances of staying super healthy and resistant to anything from salmonella to COVID to H1N1 to whatever,
Well, I don't wash onions. Who washes onions?
We do. We wash every single thing that comes into the house. So that's just our way of things.
The outside of the onion or after you peel it?
We wash the outside, and after peeling the brown part of the yellow onion or so, we wash it again. So just in case nothing snuck in there. So
I had an aide who told me she washes onions, and I'm like, oh, well, that's odd. But I guess people have to do whatever they have to do. But all those things you just mentioned, absolutely critical. But also eating well and not just washing your food, but eating good food, not junk food, not tons of sugar, not just eating really healthy, fresh food. That comes from the Mother Earth.
From Mother Earth, you mean like Ben & Jerry's New York fudge chunk? Does
that come from the garden? May I
think it grows in an orchard in Vermont, from what I remember.
Yeah. And does it freeze in the winter like icicles?
Yeah, what's good about it is that they pick it in the winter and store it, because otherwise in the summer it's rather liquid when they try to pick it from the trees. So unlike apples and other fruits. So
we got coupons for ice because of this planned power outage from Edison. They sent us coupons with the notice of telling us that they're going to shut off our power. So
you did pay the electric bill, right?
Well, we're not the only ones that are having
totally kidding.
Power at this whole community. I think they're taking out it's basically to protect against wildfires. They're taking out a piece of equipment, so it's going to impact our electricity. But
because the transformers. Yeah, if the transformers overload, they spark and that can start a fire.
Yeah. So thank God it's overnight, and I know we're in the midst of a heat wave, but hopefully it'll be cooler on Sunday night. So, yeah.
So stay safe despite that sort of thing. I think we're reaching a point now where I have to actually toddle off and go to my next broadcast.
It's time, isn't it?
I'm not sure why I have ever agreed to do back-to-back broadcasts, but it has really strengthened my
time
resolve, and I've become more resilient to the various changes. So,
are you talking about back-to-back lives that you're doing? Is
doing back-to-back lives can be a little challenging, but then again, back in the day, I used to do 23-hour courses by myself in front of a live audience. So
there you go.
Resilient. I can start new back-to-backs. Hey, so we will be back here as opposed to back-to-back next week. It will be 1 o'clock. I do 1:05 Pacific, 4 Eastern. I'm getting my times confused. 10 a.m. Hawaiian time, because you guys never at your luau's change your clocks. And we're looking at 3 Central, 2 Mountain. So be here or be square.
And watch out for our series.
Watch out for the video series. Subscribe to Total Health Live. Sorry, Total Health. You can come into Total Health Live and drop your email too. We're willing to accept them there. But Coaching for Health, there's a little subscription box on there where you can put your email in. And be aware that there's some great stuff coming next week. All right. So that's all for now.
Have a good week.
Ciao for now. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, wealthy, and wise. Ciao.